right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of BAM GPG. Go Pack Go! If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button. Give us a subscribe. You can also follow us on TikTok at bam.brands. All right, Bryson. So let's get into today's episode. So what I kind of want to talk about today is a little bit of something we've already been touching on here this offseason already, but this time kind of from a different perspective, right? So Josh Jacobs today on a couple different platforms, one of them being the Up and Adams platform, talked about where he thinks the team is right now, and what he thinks the team needs to take that next step forward and to hoist the Lombardi Trophy this coming season. So kind of summarize. So really kind of what we've been preaching. Josh Jacobs said we're probably three pieces short from becoming a complete team right now. We're missing, as he cited, an edge rusher, a cornerback, and that number one guy, that go-to guy at wide receiver, right? So we'll dig into that. We got a few more players we'll take a look at. One of them we've already looked at pretty extensively, but we'll pull him up again just because he was on the Up and Adams today. So, we'll see. Jacobs is making that pitch to kind of reunite with his former Raiders teammate and Packer, Davante Adams. So let's take a look first at Davante Adams, right? So Davante Adams obviously not a free agent this year, so it's probably gonna have to take a trade to pull him from the Jets, and it's probably nowhere near what it took for the Raiders to get him from Green Bay, right? So a guy like Davante Adams, a solid third, maybe package a fourth, fifth. You can certainly get a guy like him. Now his age is a little concerning. He is 32, going to be going into 33, but as we've mentioned already, his production hasn't slowed down. His play in the field still seems to be the same as it was when he was 27 years old.
Overall grade 75.8, 30th in the league. Receiving grade 76.8, 30th in the league. And targets 135, 10th in the league out of 98. Receptions 85, 14th in the league out of 98. Receiving yards 1,063, 15th in the league. And receiving touchdowns 8, 12th in the league.
Yeah. And one thing to keep in mind, Bryson, when we look at these stats, this is for this past season, right? So we're looking, the tale of two stories, excuse me, with these stats. So you're looking at a guy that spent the first half of the season with just a treacherous Raiders offense, right? And then he was able to kind of find some of that, regain some of that continuity with Rodgers towards the second half of the season, where you saw his numbers kind of start to spike up a little bit. So really, if he would have been with the Jets from the jump last season, he did finish with 1,063 yards, definitely not something to be ashamed of, but you're probably looking at possibly a 1,400 yard wide receiver from this past year, and certainly his overall grades on PFF would have reflected that. So you and I we've watched a few Jets games this year, right? Just to kind of check in on our old quarterback Rodgers there, and we got to catch Davante Adams here a few times, and he still looks like the same Rodgers, still catching those back shoulder passes. He's quick with the hands. He typically doesn't show his hands until he needs to. His route running still crisp. He still looks like the 27, 28-year-old Davante Adams when he was with Green Bay. So he would certainly be that guy that we need as the number one, as we've mentioned in the past.
Yeah.
So, and there are other options out there, certainly much more expensive options, probably as you're looking at T. Higgins, but then you also have to factor in the injury concern as well as what it's going to take to get T. Higgins. You're giving up draft capital, and you're going to have to rework a deal. It's going to have to be a trade and sign type of thing where, he's probably going to pull in kind of towards top of the market value at wide receiver. So you're going to be giving up a lot of your salary cap that you currently have right now, and then some draft capital, because Cincinnati's not going to let him walk. Right, at the very least, they're going to rework something. They're going to slap him with a franchise tag. They're just not going to let him walk for nothing. So certainly expensive option. There are other wide receivers out there as well for free agents, but certainly nobody that I think Green Bay would want to bring in. There's certainly nobody that's going to solidify that number one role that we're missing right now, right? And Davante Adams is a guy that could do that. T. Higgins, a guy that could do that, but what's that going to cost you, right? So Davante Adams is certainly the much cheaper option, and he's still the guy. Davante Adams is still that guy. He has history with Green Bay. He knows the city, still playing at a very high level. So, I mean, he makes a lot of sense. As long as we can get him on a somewhat team-friendly budget, right?
Yeah.
So, who knows? Maybe we work a deal this offseason, kind of reunite with Davante, bring him home, and you and I can dust off our jerseys out of the old retirement closet, right? So, just kind of looking at, again, referencing back to Josh Jacobs today, stating that, we're missing that guy, that go-to guy, and especially with Watson going to be out, right? Watson, he is a weapon. Christian Watson is a weapon when he's healthy and he's on and he's finding that consistency, but we're not going to have him next year. At least for the first 12 weeks of the season, we're not going to have a Christian Watson. So we're going to need to go out and get that guy this year because, looking at this past year and how our offense just really sputtered out towards the end of the season, nobody really stepped up. I mean, potentially, right? We have the guys that could potentially do it. You look at Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, they all have that star potential, but they just haven't taken that next step, right? To solidify, hey, I am the number one guy. So that's why I think Green Bay probably needs to go out and really take a hard look, and a guy like Adams makes complete sense for the Packers. So a cornerback, another position he talked about, right? Because we're probably going to be losing Jair Alexander this year. Keyshawn Nixon, I love the guy to death, but he's not going to be our number one corner. He's not that guy that you're going to, Justin Jefferson, we're seeing him twice a year. He's not that guy we're going to want covering a Justin Jefferson. I mean, we're going to have Jamar Chase coming into Lambeau next year. A lot of good wide receivers. So certainly going to have to kind of bolster that position, So what's available out there, right? Not a whole lot in free agencies, but there is one interesting one out there. And again, we're looking at a former Jet, Green Bay East, as they say. So DJ Reed. So he'd be a solid option, for what's available out there. You certainly could add further depth in the draft for this, but if you're looking for somebody who has experience, you could throw in and be your top corner with the absence of Jair Alexander. I mean, DJ Reed certainly could do that. If you want to run through him here real quick, Bryson.
Yeah. Overall grade 70.7, 43rd in the league. Pass rush grade 71.8, 29th in the league. One defensive grade 71.8, 43rd in the league. Coverage grade 70.1, 47th in the league. Solo tackles 55, 27th in the league. Interceptions 0, 83rd in the league. Total pressures 1, 49th in the league. Receptions allowed 35, 65th in the league.
Yeah, so I mean, all these numbers, they're not horrible. They're certainly in the upper half when you look at them. So like 43rd out of 223 cornerbacks, that's definitely in the direction you want to see these numbers, right? Interception 0. Don't really look too far into that. If you look historically at a guy like Jair Alexander, who you like to think of, right, as a shutdown corner. Jair, historically in his career, has never really had that many interceptions, right? So, and a lot of that's because teams are playing away from him, right? Teams are either playing away from him, they're scheming away from him, and the Jets were a mess defensively this year too. So there's certainly probably a scheming issue there as well. But DJ Reed would certainly be a solid option. If we're looking to address that position through free agency as well as the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Yep. So what's your thoughts on that? Is it a guy like DJ Reed? Is he a guy you'd go out and grab? Again, depending on the salary, right? You don't want to overpay a guy like that, but certainly would be a great addition to the team, especially we're at a position that we're going to need depth, especially if we're moving on from Jair Alexander.
Yeah, I just think you get somebody in the draft and hope for the best.
Yeah, you think maybe like a day 2, day 3 pick, second or third round, possibly fourth round. Draft a couple spots at cornerback, right? See where you hit.
Just hope the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other position, we've actually covered this pretty in depth already in some of our previous episodes. When you look at the likes of guys like Khalil Mack, right, and obviously Myles Garrett, which would be top of the list for guys that we would want. It'd be a dream, if we could go out and do it and make it happen. But if Green Bay's looking for a more budget-friendly guy, still a solid player. The guy's actually playing this weekend. It's going to be upcoming free agent. Plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, Josh Sweat. So taking a look at Sweat here, his age, he's a big body, 6'5", 265. He's 27 years old, similar age to like a Rashawn Gary, right? So his age, he's certainly coming into his prime. But go ahead and run through him here for us real quick, Bryson.
Yeah, overall grade 75.7, 28th in the league. Pass rush grade 71.5, 38th in the league. And one defensive grade 69.3, 48th in the league. Solo tackles 27 solo tackles, 28th in the league. Sacks 8, 26th in the league. Assists 7, 55th in the league. And forced fumbles 0, 85th in the league.
Yeah, and again, these are all solid numbers, especially you're looking at a loaded, very talented Philadelphia Eagles, not just defensive front, but their defense, right? So he certainly would be a guy that you could stick opposite of Rashawn Gary, and that would kind of free them both up. Right, so solid player, certainly on the younger side, is in the prime of his career right now. That big body you're looking for, a guy that can really pressure the quarterback. And his run defense a little bit lower, 69.3, but certainly would be an improvement over what we currently have, right? So definitely a guy of interest. There's on our list, especially, right? There's obviously going to be guys ahead of him that we'd rather have, but I wouldn't be upset if we went out and got a guy like Josh Sweat, right? Especially at a position we have to address this season. If we're going to be competitive this year, not only within our division, but a lot of the games we have coming up, we're going to have to get to the quarterback to win the games. So certainly would be a guy I'd welcome on the team, if we're not able to get guys like Myles Garrett or Khalil Mack, guys like of that caliber. Josh Sweat's probably, if they're 1A, 1B, he's probably 1C, right? So certainly wouldn't mind him. Definitely intriguing. And again, neither you or I have a rooting interest in the game this weekend. We'd rather see other teams in there, certainly. So if nothing else, maybe he's the guy we watch during the game, right? Kind of get a little further scouting on him, see how he is out on the field there, see what kind of playing style he has, and just kind of make our own assumptions of what it would be like with him in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Right. So when I look at this, I want to touch on this Josh Jacobs interviews today. So on the surface, I look at it, from a fan's perspective, right? I agree 100% with those things. We need wide receiver, we need cornerback, and we need a edge rusher, right? So it's no secret, that Lucas Van Ness just hasn't developed into what we're looking for yet, and maybe he will, but this current time he hasn't, just hasn't, right? So I don't think there shouldn't be any ill feelings amongst any of the players we have at that position now, but kind of where when I take a step back, see these comments, listen to these comments, it kind of makes me wonder, like as a receiver on the Green Bay Packers, you see your star running back coming out saying, "Hey, we don't have that guy that is the number one." How do you think the receivers in Green Bay respond to that? Are they going to respond negatively, like, "Hey, why the heck are you calling me out?" Right? I thought, we made some progression this year. Where did these comments come from? I think I am a number one. Is there going to be bitterness amongst teammates, or is this something that could potentially motivate a young player on the Packers? Right? He certainly didn't.
I think it could motivate a player
You think it would motivate him? And
to keep the number one.
Yeah, it certainly could motivate the receivers. Like, hey, our star running back saying we need a number one. He needs us to step up, right? He certainly didn't talk bad about any of the receivers we do have. Simply stated, we need that guy, kind of that go-to guy when we need to go out and make a big play on a third down or a fourth down, right? We don't have that 1A guy now. So there's a couple things, you could see some bitterness amongst the receivers because of those comments, or it could be a motivational factor this offseason for him. So I thought that was kind of interesting. As a fan, initially I was just like, yeah, 100% correct. But then when you take a step back from it, it's just like, if you were a wide receiver on the Packers, how would you feel about him making these comments about not about you in a direct way, but in an indirect way? You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, hey, he's talking about our position. He's talking about us. Doesn't think we're good enough to be that number one. So I thought that was, certainly as a fan, not a player on the team by any means, 100% agree with him. I just haven't seen enough out of who we have there now. I just don't see a guy that's going to step up and take on that number one role. And again, mentioned yesterday, we thought it would be Jaden Reed, but he kind of simmered out back half of the year, right?
Yeah.
And you actually you have Reed's jersey on today, don't you?
Mhm.
So representing. See, if you're seeing this, Reed, Bryson's still pulling for you. He's got faith in you.
Mhm.
So Bryson, you actually attended Reed's camp last year or this past summer, didn't you?
Mhm.
You guys had a little rock paper scissors competition. Who won that?
I can't remember.
I don't remember. But yeah, no, and Reed could certainly still be that guy, right? I don't know what happened last year, and it could be for a multitude of reasons. Just as we've mentioned before, just last year, just watching Jordan Love, something just seemed to be off, right? Whether it was an injury lingering, he just didn't find that consistency, and I think he will. Love's still the guy. Love him, hate him. He's our franchise quarterback. He's still that guy. He's going to hit the field next year. Hopefully he stays injury free, and he'll start to find some of that continuity with some of the receivers. And certainly, as we mentioned, Matt LaFleur is going to have to change his scheme a little bit going into next year, because it did kind of feel like, as you watch those last 4 or 5 games of the season, that teams were starting to kind of figure out our offense. It didn't seem to be matter what we're doing. We just stalled out an awful lot. Just had a real hard time moving the ball, right? It just seemed like two opposing teams' defenses, our offense was really predictable. I don't know if you got that sense watching games, Bryson.
Not really.
You think the scheme's still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the first half, it's not. Second half, they start to.
Yeah, that's certainly something I felt all season too. Just the first half of every game, right? It just seemed like we started slow. Started slow. It's like we were waiting to figure out what the opposing team was going to do before we made any adjustments. So it didn't seem to be a lot of first half adjustments. We'd go into halftime, you'd see some adjustments, and we'd start moving the ball well in the second half. You saw that
Just
throughout.
came up short like every game.
Yeah, and it hurt us, especially those divisional games, right? We're playing some of these top teams, and if you're kind of sputtering out in the first half, not making a lot of adjustments, and it's going to hurt you, right? You're playing catch up. Granted, you're playing better in the second half. You made those adjustments, but you need to make those earlier. You need to make those earlier in the first half. And and maybe there's a reason for it, analytics. Maybe there's some stats for it, but why the heck were we taking the ball? Every time we'd win a coin toss, we were taking the ball first, knowing that we really, really struggled in the first half on offense this year.
Yeah, I don't know why we did that.
I don't, and I maybe thinking about it, I kind of understand the attention or reasoning for it. Maybe LaFleur's wanting to grab the ball, score right away, really kind of set the tone for the game and let the other team play catch up. But knowing how your offense has played this year throughout the first half, it hasn't been great. It just baffled me. Being at the games, receiving the ball first, going 3 and out and punting. Especially, we seem to be a second half team. Not that I'm in favor of that. Certainly feel like we need to figure it out in the first half, make adjustments a lot quicker. But it just seemed like maybe we should be if we're winning the coin toss, taking the ball after halftime, right? But it wasn't something LaFleur seemed to want to do.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll change. Maybe he'll. I'm sure the whole season's going to be in review for him, right? So maybe that'll be something he changes this off season, and maybe it's not. Maybe he feels strongly about that, and feels strongly about being able to make those adjustments quicker in the first half, and coming out and really putting the pedal to the metal. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. But again, as we learn more, things develop this off season. We'll run through it with you guys, and then as far as the draft goes, once the Super Bowl's over here this weekend, we'll start to really ramp up some of our free agent talks, as well as the draft. We'll start. Maybe we'll throw in a couple mock drafts in there, Bryson.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll throw in a couple mock drafts for you guys, kind of see who's available, who we're looking at. We do have the 23rd pick. Yeah, I don't feel strongly about moving up in this draft, right?
We gotta wait till Super Bowl's over for some mock drafts, though.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. But what I was saying is I just don't feel like there's good enough players that would warrant us to give up draft capital to move up in the draft. Because if we were to move up, we're not going to give up enough to move into like a top 10 pick. You're probably like looking at moving up from like a 23 to a 15, right? I just don't think there's that much of a talent gap between where we're picking at 23 to move up to grab somebody at 15. Right, but we'll see. We'll run through some mock drafts and see where some of the guys land. But like you mentioned, we'll ramp that up here after the Super Bowl, and then tomorrow, Bryson, NBA trade deadline. It's already
2
been quite a
p.m.
few. Yeah, it's already been
Central
quite a
Time.
Central
2 p.m.
Time.
Central Time.
2 p.m. Central Time. So there's already been some surprising moves in the NBA too. So we'll get into that a little bit too. Talk about that, what that means for these teams, and kind of look at the playoff picture. How does that change that playoff picture moving forward in the NBA?
And I know the playoffs is close. The playoffs are close. I think it's April.
It is in April. So, I mean, this is definitely, you're looking down the barrel towards the end of the season here in the NBA. So, should be an exciting finish. You got as we've mentioned, there's been some teams going out there and getting some of these big name players to make a run here towards the end of the season. So it'll be interesting. I think you, as we've mentioned before, Bryson's a big Boston Celtics fan. Solid team, top to bottom. Absolutely. So
And you're a Bulls fan.
I am, yeah. So we're not quite there. I don't see the Bulls pulling the trigger on any trades to better themselves this year, certainly. But I think the Celtics are a team that probably stay put too, because keep the band together. You guys won the championship last season. We'll see where you guys finish this season, but
Hoping we can pass the Cavs.
yeah, and you guys have seemed to play well against the Cavs this year. So we'll see.
I think we're 2-1 against them this year.
Yeah, you guys are. So it's been a good season again for Boston, but we'll see where things shake out in the NBA, and we'll maybe tomorrow we can dive in, talk a little NBA with you guys. Again, after the trade deadline, we'll kind of review and recap all the movements in the NBA and see what that looks like for the teams that are competing for a championship this year.
And as always,
Go Pack Go!